Good morning to my dear students. How are you all? I hope that you all are fine and doing your best to learn at home. We have already gone through 5 chapters, and I hope that you might have gone through all the chapters, learned the question and answers, saw the PPTs, and trying to do your best in your own way all alone under the guidance of your parents. Now, to go ahead, what we are going to learn is about chapter number 6, that is administrative system and architecture during the medieval age. That is chapter number 6. Now, what you can view on your screen is on the left, that is this, you'll find Palia, known as hero stones, and on the right, you'll find an image which some of you might have surely seen when you visit your village's hometown. It's a village lok dairo. What does it mean? It's a group of folk singers. And where do you see them? As I said, you can see them on the stage, and this type of stage are set up in villages, especially for the Lok Dairo. Now, why are these programs conducted? And what does this stone, Palia, have importance in a village? Now, at first, let us understand Palia. Palia means a stone fixed as a memorial commemorating the heroes. Now, who are the heroes here? The martyrs. The martyrs, the people who sacrificed their life for the country. These palias are put up as it is a tribute to martyrs who have sacrificed their lives while protecting and ensuring the welfare of the people. These palias are worshipped during festivals, and songs are sung as homage to these martyrs. And this is the culture of our country. So when you are visiting your villages during holidays, sometimes you might have surely seen this. You might have seen the palias. It is generally at the entrance or at the 4 crossroads in the village or the main center point of the village. And at times, during festival times, the songs are sung as homage to these martyrs. And this has been the culture of our country since years. Now, understanding the civilization and culture of the Rajput age. The first part was the introduction about Palia. Now, let's go back to something which we have already gone through. That is, understanding the civilization and the culture of Rajput age. In that, at first, what we are going to see is administrative system during the Rajput age. How were things administered, looked after? That is what is there in the first part of this chapter. During the Rajput era, India was not ruled by any one king. India was divided into big and small states, and the extent of each kingdom depended on the king's military prowess. Once again, I am repeating. India was divided into big and small states, and the extent of each kingdom depended on the king's military prowess. That is, skill or expertise in a particular activity or field. And we have already studied about the Rajput kings and the different dynasties in the previous chapter, that is chapter number 4, Rajput age. So we have come across many of the dynasties. We have learned about the name of the dynasties in chapter number 4. Then in this chapter, what are we going to learn? That remains the question. So let's see. In this chapter, we are going to learn about Diyar. Now here, what is Diyar? The Rajput. About their administrative system, literature, architecture, and external invasions. These are the 4 topics that are covered in chapter number 6, that is administrative system and architecture during the medieval age, that is the Rajput age. Let's see about the first, that is the administrative system. After the 7th century, various Rajput dynasties ruled in India. And which were the dynasties? That we already saw, and we learned about it in chapter number 4. However, even though different dynasties came to power, there were little change in the administrative system. Though kingship was hereditary, it was not compulsory that the eldest son would always automatically become the next king. The heir apparent selected by the king was called the crown prince. So who was called the crown prince? The crown prince was the heir apparent selected by the king. Right? So here the crown prince was selected by the king. But in some cases, even people and ministers elected or selected their king. So apart from this selection, even election in some of the cases was done by people and the ministers of the kingdom. For example, while in Kashmir, King Yashashkara was selected and enthroned by the Brahmin groups. In Gujarat, Kumarpal was selected as the successor by the Council of Ministers. The ministers were appointed to assist the king to administer and manage the kingdom effectively. Yet, at times, people became victims of poor, wrong administrative policies. Now, this particular point, you can recollect the recent ways of the administration of our state, which we have studied in chapter number 3, the government. You'll find over here it's written, the ministers were appointed to assist the king to administer and manage the kingdom effectively. So in present time, what is and what can we see? What we see is at present we have got the chief minister who runs the administration of the state with the helps of his ministers. So both of this, that is in olden times as well as present time, olden time means the medieval age as well as the present age, the administrative pattern still remains the same. Now about the villages, that is administrative system in the villages. Village institutions were very important during the medieval period. The panchayat looked after its administration. The head of the panchayat was called Mukhi or Sarpanch, and he was responsible for protecting and delivering justice to the villagers. His was the final word. Still, in many cases, the Gram Sabha would also give verdict and punish culprits. Even today, at the village level, the Gram Panchayat or the leaders of the Panchayat provide guidelines to the people. So what you find over here is something that was during the medieval age, and at the end it is very clearly mentioned that Gram Panchayat or the elders, sorry, Panchayat provide guidelines to the people. Before that, here it reads as, even today at the village level, the Gram Panchayat or the leaders of the Panchayat provide guidelines to the people. At times, land revenue was the main income of the kingdom. Each kingdom had different ways of collecting land revenue, but usually the sixth part of the cultivation was taken as the land revenue. Apart from this, other taxes were also levied on the people. Different officers were appointed for different activities. Moreover, taxes were collected at ports and octroi points. Landlords collected the tax and paid tribute to the kings. So this particular administrative pattern which we see over here, where the collection of land revenue, that was the income of the kingdom in medieval age, and recently if you see the current administrative pattern, we have got different types of taxes that are imposed, which helps the government to run the administration very smoothly. So if we go to see, we have already accepted the same administrative pattern of the medieval age. That is something very good, because what was done then is also important what is being done now. An image for you. What's written? You can see the name, Hemachandracharya, a very well-known, learned person. So, after this, what are we going to start with? The first part we saw about the administrative. Now, when we come across the name, or we see, and when we try to understand about Hemachandracharya, what comes to our mind is about the literature. During the Rajput age, there was a lot of religious writing as well as literature of various kinds. Scholars and education received great patronage from kings. Many literary works were composed in Sanskrit, Prakrit, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, etc. The great Sanskrit poet Magd composed the epic Shishu Palvada. This epic describes the killing of Shishupal by Sri Krishna. Similarly, another poet, Sri Harsh, wrote the epic Naishad Charitra, which is about the story of Nal and Damayanti. Even songs by Radha and other gopis sung in praise of Lord Krishna were presented in a lyrical manner. Sung in praise of Lord Krishna were presented in a lyrical manner. The biography and achievements of the kings were also composed in a poetic manner. Hemachandracharya, the image which we saw, what did he write? He wrote Kumarpal Charitra, that is based on the life of the Solanki king of Gujarat, King Kumarpal. And he also wrote a grammar book named Siddhahem Sab Dhanushashan. As the title indicates, the name of King Siddharaj Jai Singh and Hemachandracharya are associated with this book. Both together wrote this book. This book was considered so important that it was placed on an elephant during a procession in Patan. So, Hemachandracharya was the one who wrote the book Siddhahem Sabdhanu Sashan. And it was a book on grammar which is considered very important, and the book was considered so important that it was placed on an elephant during a procession in Patan. Not only poetries, but plays were also written during that time. Bhavbhuti wrote Uttam Charitra, Uttam Charita, while Pandit Narayan composed Hitopdesh, a collection of stories based on Panchtantra. Schools or a nearby library must be having books containing collection of stories or folk tales. So apart from these books, even poetries, epics were written during this medieval period. Now we come to the third part, and that is the architecture. When we hear this word architecture, what comes to our mind? The olden times constructions, which are very much famous, and after years, after centuries and centuries, still stand as it is. So you can just imagine what type of construction and the construction of those monuments, buildings, or temples, how it would might have been done. So here the first one, what you can see is the Tanjavur temple. It still stands as it is. Here you can see the Khajuraho. And many of you might have surely visited these places. When you visit this place, that time only you come to know how beautiful the construction is, and it still stands as it is. Among the various constructions during the Rajput age, temple construction is noteworthy. The images that you saw of Tanjavur temple and Khajuraho, how beautiful it looks. The Rajput kings were fond of constructing grand and artistic buildings. The architecture and sculpture of that time is evident from the temple, forts, palaces, lakes, etc. Now, something in detail about the constructions. Among the temples, Khajuraho in Madhya Pradesh and the Puri temple of Lord Jagannath are famous for their architecture and sculpture. The Sun Temple of Konark was also built during that time. The Konark Temple was constructed with great fineness and was shaped like a chariot driven by 7 horses. Among the other Sun Temple of India, the Martand Temple of Kashmir and the Modhera Sun Temple of Gujarat are famous. A prominent feature of the Modhera temple is that the first rays of the sun fall directly on the idol. So here what you got to learn is about the different temples being constructed during the Rajput age, the places where they are constructed, and all these temples are very much famous. If you ask your parents at home, grandparents, you give them the name and they will tell you what it is. For you, it is something which you have seen in the book or on your laptop or mobile. But if you ask your parents, your grandparents, they can surely tell you and describe what the constructions are. Because they might have visited these places. And in near future, you also might get a chance to visit these temples. More about the constructions. The Ellora caves of the Deccan have caves representing three religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. One among this is the Grand Kailash Temple. The Elephanta Caves near Mumbai have a beautiful three-faced sculpture of Lord Shiva. The Meenakshi Temple at Madurai is famous all over India. The temples of South India are especially well known for their imposing gateways called Gopurams. After hearing about the fame of such grand temples, many foreign invaders came to loot them. The magnificent Somnath temple of Gujarat was attacked many times. So this was also one of the reasons why the invaders came down to loot these places, because it had a lot of wealth. And what you read at last is about our state Gujarat, that the Somnath temple of Gujarat was attacked many times. It was attacked because the invaders wanted to capture over it as well as take over the wealth that was there. Going to the next part and almost coming to the end of the chapter, what you can see is about Muhammad Ghazni. How he came to India. That is his route to Somnath. So the place where he came and attacked Somnath to loot it, to get the wealth from there. So this is the map. You can find Veraval Somnath over here. Muhammad Ghazni, he took this route and then came to Somnath. Though the Rajput age is well known for its valor and sacrifice, it also saw the constructions of many beautiful and imposing buildings. That's what we read previous. Many foreign invaders invaded India during this period. In that, Muhammad Ghazni, the Sultan of Ghazna, attacked India many times between 1000 CE and 1075 CE. In spite of facing problems during the attacks, he continued to plunder India with full force. During one such attack, when Gujarat was under Bhimdev Solanki's rule, he plundered Somnath. Many people from Saurashtra and Gujarat joined Bhimdev Solanki and tried to protect Somnath, but failed because Muhammad Ghazni had a very powerful army. So we failed. But that was not the end. What you can see is Prithviraj. The name itself is enough. Now, what role does he have? And with this, we will be coming to the end of the chapter number 6, that is Administrative System and Architecture during the Middle Age. What are we going to learn ahead at the end of the chapter? Change of power at Delhi. After the demise of Muhammad Ghazni, the leaders of Ghazna started vying for the throne. But natural, when one king passes away or dies, all of them have an eye on the throne, that who will be the next king. So what happened was fight. However, the Rajput kings did not take advantage of this weakness. Meanwhile, Sabuddin Gauri established his strong rule in Ghazna and decided to attack India. His intention was not to loot, but establish his rule here. Initially, he wasn't successful. He could not forget his defeat by Queen Naika Devi of Anhilwad Patan, and therefore did not attack India for 12 years. Finally, the second time he attacked Delhi. Now, during this, Prithviraj fought bravely, but without any prior preparation or help from other Rajput kings. So, what we can know from here is he was alone fighting the battles. With his defeat, the Rajput rule came to an end in Delhi. So, this was the end of, with the defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan, the end of Rajput rule came to end in Delhi. That is, the Rajput rule came to an end in Delhi. As a result, Sabuddin established his rule there and extended his kingdom. After Sabuddin, his slave, who was also his commander, that is, Qutbuddin Aibak, ascended the throne. He was known as the founder of the slave dynasty. So this is how after Prithviraj, after Sabuddin, Qutbuddin Aibak, one after the other, the kings started coming to India and ruled different parts of India. We saw the defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan. So what happened was, with this, Rajput rule came to an end in Delhi. There was a change in the administration and society. In place of valor and sacrifice, people started conspiring against each other for power. So now here, what was going on was the fight for power. Because everybody wants to be powerful, everybody wants a seat. So what happens over here when you want to have power, or when you want to rule a particular kingdom or a state, the kings had to fight. And what happened? What you can see at the last is the throne of Delhi was stained with blood. Stained with blood means the only thing that happens because of continuous and constant fight for power. Where nothing is seen, there is no value of people, just killing and try to be on the throne. So that is all about chapter number 6. I hope, my dear students, that you might have understood. Just watching video one time is not going to help you. Please see that whenever you get time, spare time and watch the video 1 or 2 times and try to understand the lesson by self too. The time is different and we are learning in a different way. All the best. Thank you. See you back again in the next chapter.